In South Bend, Indiana, a federal judge dismisses a wrongful death lawsuit filed by the family of a black man who a white police officer killed. The federal judge ruled Sergeant Ryan O'Neill acted reasonably when Eric Logan moved toward him with a knife rushed over his head. The former officer said Logan refused to drop a knife while investigating a report of a person breaking into cars. O'Neill had a body cam at the time, but it had not been turned on. Oh my God, if Roland was here for this right here tonight, because the no body cam on, immediate firing is what would be coming out of his mouth right now. One of y'all go ahead and say it for him. Who wants to tackle it first? Tammy, talk to me.
I'm not going to say what Roland probably would say, immediate firing, because I actually worked at the Department of Justice for over a decade. I grew up in that department. That's not how that works. Firing an officer doesn't do anything, okay? We have police unions here that their whole job is to protect these officers and fight for them to get their jobs back. So firing the officer, okay, great. If you don't have just and sufficient cause, which is the standard of proof, whenever someone is part of a union, which most officers are, guess what? The employing agency who fired the person is not going to be able to meet the burden of just and sufficient cause, and the arbitrator, who 9 times out of 10 don't look at like a us, is going to say there's no just and sufficient cause and give that officer back their job and give them the money back that they lost. So firing an officer, I need to let y'all know, that's not the answer. That's not the solution.
Well, what's the solution? What's the answer?
The solution is we need to pay attention to these police unions. We need to pay attention to these unions like AFL-CIO that love to endorse Black Democratic candidates, okay? And whenever somebody like me in the state of Texas runs for Congress, and I'm using my over a decade of DOJ senior attorney experience to say, hey, opponent, that ain't a good look to be bragging about your AFL-CIO endorsement, because that's the same union that houses police unions, the same ones that kept Derek Chauvin on the police force. So when I was covering the Chauvin trial on Court TV while I was also running for Congress, guess what? Right here in the great state of Texas, in San Antonio, the police department tried for some reform. But AFL-CIO, that union, they fought against the reform. AFL-CIO, these unions are the ones that are fighting for these officers not to have that discipline, fighting for the officers to get their jobs back. They pay for the attorneys to represent these officers in the arbitration right here in Texas.
Right. I don't disagree with that. But the Fraternal Order of Police, the FOP, and the International Union for Police Chiefs and Former Police Chiefs both supported the provisions that were in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And one of those provisions included swift penalties for not wearing your body cam. So the negotiations that could take place for police officers to be held accountable. I'm not saying immediate firing, because government employees are going to have due process of rights, and they're going to have protections, whether it's police or whether they are working at Metro. They're going to have protections. But there are ways that we can make for penalties for the failure to wear your body cams, and there are ways that we can create a presumption that it was something that should not have been done. I mean, there would have to be a change, and it would have to be agreed upon, and I think there is more goodwill. I don't know what the FLCIO is talking about, but I know the FOP represents police departments, and they're the ones who pay for their legal fees, and they want for there to be these measures of responsibility and are willing to trade them for things like giving up qualified immunity, giving up payment of legal fees and other things. So I do think that there's room to get something done here.
They strategically want that, and they're going to strategically put that out because it sounds good, right? But not if you don't connect the dots. Not if that's not part of the collective bargaining agreement. Not if it's not part of the standards of employee conduct that specifically lay out that failing to wear your body cam, failing to turn it on, results in penalties with this number of days. So all of that is great, and you're absolutely correct, Monique. But me being an attorney that actually worked at DOJ, not only at the Office of the Pardon Attorney, not only as a former federal prosecutor, not only defending DOJ on the civil side under the Channing Phillips, also as a former employment law attorney for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. It all has to be in there for that discipline to stick and make sense. Yes, they can support the George Floyd Policing Act, right? No chokeholds. All of that is already on the federal books where you can't do that, right? It sounds good, but if it's not actually all the way tied together, here, and here, for that discipline to stick, and absolutely no arguments that can be made to say that this officer can be brought back onto the force or that there was not just insufficient cause, we're going to continue to see the same thing happening over and over again, which no real solutions to this problem. Experts need to be brought into these conversations, people that actually work there and people that know what they're talking about, not just those that are talking for a good look.
Right. And Dr. Jabinga, doesn't it seem, though, that this is another case that's like the one I was just speaking to Senator Bradford about, where the state has an opportunity to make changes to the codification of the laws, changes to the procedures, and then local officials have an opportunity to make changes as well so that we don't end up back in this position. Either agree or disagree. And if you disagree, by all means, tell us what the heck else we're supposed to be doing.
No, I agree. I mean, it's absolutely true that the opportunity to make these changes are there, but the will is just not there, because there's basically this idea, whether we're talking about South Bend or they're talking about other places, is that this is just eventually going to fall by the wayside. And I think that as it relates to the work that we need to do, we need to increase a lot of the activism on our part, particularly as it relates to the federal level. I'm sorry, I know I've mentioned this a couple of times, but it's just like I've given up on the ability for states to do the right thing consistently. I know with Senator Bradford and what's going on in California, that's incredible, that's powerful. We need more examples of that. He talked about it, happening in many other states. But efforts like this are not being successful consistently enough for me, and we need to continue to put this pressure on the federal government while we have the ability to do so. I believe that Senator Tim Scott was just queuing up his, run for presidency and trying to pretend that he was interested in this police reform bill. But look, there are so many other aspects of the bill that we can continue to fight for, like this registry of officers like this, so that they can't just go to another place and get hired, right? We can continue to put pressure on that, but sometimes I feel like we lack the will to do so because we're so caught up in the outrage of what just happened that we don't keep our eyes on the prize going forward.
Yeah, I was going to try to go the entire show without mentioning the name of Senator Tim Scott because I have to keep my assignment in mind. Dr. Avis, is there really a lack of will? It seems that the majority of the country supports common sense reforms. The majority of the country believes the things that they saw happen, like what happened to George Floyd, what happens to so many Black and brown men and women in the United States, should not be happening. And then the next thing you know, there's a crime spike, and they say that it's because of lack of police officers being secure in their job. Couldn't have had anything to do with like a pandemic, just ravishing an entire country and world, but whatever. Dr. Avis, if the will is there in the citizens, how do we translate that into the will being there with our legislators, like the ones who supposedly work for us?
Yeah, the challenge is, and I do agree that the will is there among the people, and what it has to happen is continued pressure to be able to, force lawmakers to act. Now, I will say that there has been, and I agree, it hasn't been as consistent as any of us would have liked, but there have been some changes at state and local levels across the country since the murder of George Floyd. And personally, I think that is really where there needs to be the focus. It's a lot more diffuse. It's more complicated because, golly, we have 50 states and we have tons of localities. But when it comes to this issue of criminal justice reform, that's really where the rubber meets the road in most spaces. Your state and your local officials are really the place where most of that power is wielded. I would love to see the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act pass. But I frankly believe that this is just another example of the Republicans playing Lucy and the football to the Democrats' Charlie Brown, where they continue to act like they're going to do something, act like they have good faith. The Democrats believe it for some reason, and then at the last minute they pull the football away and the Democrats are looking ridiculous. I don't believe there was ever any genuine effort by the Republican Party to ever really do something significant with this Justice and Policing Act. I believe that from the very beginning, the plan was to just delay, and then ultimately, when the public pressure was not as huge, they could just kind of let it fizzle out, and that's exactly what happened.
But see, even if all of that was true, Avis, and I don't necessarily disagree. Doesn't that end up being them just knowing how fickle we are, that they can just wait us out because whatever amount of outrage and fury and insistence upon there being change that we have when whatever latest horrendous thing happens, if they just wait long enough, everybody will go back to their lives and take the words of their representatives, which, I mean, we're supposed to be able to take their words, but we just can't. But isn't that a statement about us even more so than it is about the people we keep putting in these jobs?
I agree with you. It is a reflection of a strategy of understanding that a heightened sense of political pressure by the public is not something that will last forever, that eventually other issues will pop up and that level of pressure will eventually wane to some degree and to a lot, as we've seen now. But I do also think that it shows us that the reaction to this is that there needs to be even more effort to have a larger majority in terms of a legislative majority in Congress so that you don't have to have this very, very slim margin. The reason why it's so hard for the Democrats, for example, to get anything passed right now, including this, is because there is no change in terms of the filibuster rule. The 50-50, tie is not enough to get things over the finish line. You actually will need 60 votes for anything to pass. And, we've already seen through their actions that the Republicans aren't willing to vote for anything. So to me, the only way that I see us being able to make a significant push in terms of key issues that we know are absolutely critically important to us is not to be so disheartened by this delay and this defeat or this deflation of, this law that actually never really came to pass here. Instead of letting that make us even less likely to vote because we're thinking, oh my God, my vote doesn't matter, the exact opposite reaction needs to happen. The exact opposite reaction needs to be, I'm pissed that they did this again, and what we need to do is come back even stronger next time so that it's not even this close. Because if we had an overwhelming majority in the Senate, for example, if we had 60 votes, this wouldn't even be a question, it would be law already.
Absolutely. I thank you for bringing that up because people become disenfranchised and just become completely fed up with the system when things like this happen. The bill doesn't even have to be dead, actually. They could be in reconciliation. They could be coming back to the table. They could be doing whatever it is they want to do. When you have the Fraternal Order of Police, when you have the Chiefs Union coming out and saying, we're still willing to meet with anybody who's serious about this, that means that hell just froze over when they're saying that they're willing to come to the table because they know that ultimately there's going to be another dead black man in the middle of the street and it's going to come back around. And I know I'm supposed to go on to the next story, but I'm not going to do it without saying, Senator Tim Scott, I came to your office along with Attorney Bakari Sellers and along with Attorney Benjamin Crump and along with the families of George Floyd and the families of Terrence Crutcher and the families of Eric Garner. And we did not come there to kiss your ring, sir. We did not come there to make you feel good about yourself. We didn't come to hear stories about how you're black and you came from the black community and you know more about being black than we know about you being black. We know you're black. We just don't know if you have a conscience. We don't know anything about your character. So the next time I have an opportunity to say anything about you, it's gonna be to make sure that you lose your job, sir, because you have shown that you do not mean good for the people you claim to serve.
Folks, back to that Roland Martin unfiltered video in just one moment.
Oh, that spin class was brutal. Well, you can try using the Buick's massaging seat. Ooh, yeah, that's nice.
Can I use Apple CarPlay to put some music on?
Sure, it's wireless.
It's something we all like. Okay, hold on.
What's your Buick's Wi-Fi password?
Buick Envision 2021.
Oh, you should pick something stronger. That's really predictable.
That's a really tight spot. Don't worry, I used to hate parallel parking.
Me too.
Hey.
Really outdid yourself.
Yes, we did.
The all-new Buick Envision, an SUV built around you. All of
Time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
You dig?